Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the JayMovieTalk podcast. This is episode 350. 50 episodes until 400. Inching ever so closely to that number and everything. Now, for everyone who listened to last week's episode where I said, hey, I'll be back to talk about the movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And that was the initial plan. But I kind of thought about it, and maybe I will review Kiss Kiss Bang Bang at a later date. But I decided to kind of expand on the whole buddy movie thing and decided to do a top 10 buddy movie list. It's been a while since I did a top 5 or a top 10 for anything really. So, I decided, hey, let me go ahead and do this now because this episode, even though it's coming out here in September, at the very beginning of September, after this episode, I'm going to go into full horror movie mode. So basically, you're going to get 2 months, maybe 3. I'm not sure if I'm going to go all the way into November, but we'll have to see how I'm feeling near the end of October. And I'm pretty sure one of the episodes in October, I'll probably mention like, hey, either I'm going to continue, pressing on with the horror movie stuff into November, or I'm like, you know what, I'm going to pivot to something else. But as of right now, I will be doing 2 months of nothing but horror film related episodes. So I would say this is the bridging of the gap between the end of August and everything, and then leading into full-on horror movie mode for me. But that will come starting next week. As for this episode, like I say, top 10 countdown of not necessarily my favorite buddy movies, but just 10 buddy movies that I want to talk about and everything like that. So basically, of course, the criteria for a buddy movie is basically the two leads who are kind of like an odd couple, basically. You either have, one guy that's kind of straight lace, and then the other guy is kind of like a wild card, or, just two different contrasting styles of, characters who just kind of happen to come together for whatever reason and to overcome either some type of conflict or whatever. And ironically, they have to have chemistry together, because that's what makes a really good buddy movie, is the chemistry between the two leads. Because if they don't have good chemistry, then the movie doesn't work. And I'm pretty sure just like me, all of you have probably watched, movies where the two main leads have really great chemistry, or they have sucky chemistry, or there are those few occurrences where they don't get along in real life, but when the cameras are on and they hit action, you swear that they are the best friends in the world. And those are always very interesting to me, where people who spend a lot of time together who don't really like each other, but their characters are great together. And also too, the criteria that I'm going with, at least for this list, is, it can be a blend of action, comedy, also some type of a emotional connection, and everything. And then, it could be a cop thriller. It could be a comedy, as well, a road movie, because we do have road movies with buddies together. And then, of course, action flicks. And I think you kind of get that mostly with action and comedy. It's rarely when you get dramas that are a buddy movie, but mostly it's action or comedies where you get two mismatched people together, and they just kind of fall into a certain type of situation. And the thing too is that this was a very big thing in the 80s, throughout the 90s, up into the, I want to say, early 2000s. And then we kind of got away from it. And then there are those, rare few occasions in recent years where we get like buddies, buddy movies together. But growing up as a kid in the 90s, these were the type of movies that I saw a lot of, and everything. So yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun with this list, and I want you guys, my vault crew, because that's what I'm going with now. Anyone who is a part of the J Movie Talk podcast, whether it's here, over on YouTube, Threads, wherever you follow me at, you are a part of the vault crew now, because that is what I'm calling everybody, y'all, my vault crew. So I think we're gonna have some fun with this, and if you don't hear, me talk about probably one of your favorite buddy movies, go ahead. You can hit me up, whether it's on, on my socials, whether it's on Instagram at JMT Podcast, whether it's over on YouTube. You can comment down below and let me know what your favorite buddy duo is. Over on Threads, I'm the J Giles and everything like that. So yeah, you can definitely let me know. Oh, also too, I will say this at the beginning episode. I was going to save it to the end, but I'll say it at the beginning. I did start a Reddit sub community over on Reddit and everything. It's called Vault Crew. So if you are on Reddit, or if you want to join Reddit because you enjoy listening to me and everything like that, and everything, go ahead. You can go over to Reddit, hit that join button and get some really cool conversations started, and we can, have different discussions and things like that. It doesn't always have to be just a part of the podcast, just people coming together, have really good conversations. Because one thing about it, I mean, if you listen to my podcast, that means you enjoy movies, and everything. So that's all I'm really trying to do, is just bring people together who enjoy movies, TV shows, entertainment for the most part, just different people, different opinions and stuff like that. Nothing crazy, and everything. I want everyone to respect each other at least, and everything like that. So yeah, you can hit me up over on Reddit also. Like I say, the Vault Crew. Well, it's not the Vault Crew, but it's just Vault Crew over on Reddit as well. So without further ado, let's get into this top 10 buddy movie countdown. And like I say, this is not necessarily my all-time favorite. It's just 10 that I thought I would have fun just talking about, really, because there are a lot to kind of choose from. So starting this thing off, starting at number 10, I'm going to go with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the pairing of John Candy and Steve Martin. Now, I mean, you really can't get too much better than John Candy and Steve Martin with what they do in this movie. Because you have Steve Martin, who's this straight-laced guy, who's kind of wired just a little too tight. And then you have John Candy, who is just this guy who's always yapping and everything like this. And Steve Martin is like, he just fed up with John Candy throughout the whole movie. And they pretty much have to basically work together in order to get Steve Martin home, and everything. And they go through a lot of wildness in this movie and everything. And it's a fun movie. And the funny thing about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is that you don't necessarily think of it as a Thanksgiving movie, but it's actually a Thanksgiving movie. But I mean, when I was a kid, I always think it was a Christmas movie. For some reason, I guess because of the cold and everything like that. You always associate the cold, with Christmas, not so much with Thanksgiving, and everything. But I feel like it is probably like one of the best comedy duos, because, like I say, they play very well off each other in that movie. And John Candy's character in that movie actually has like a sadness to it, because when you realize he is traveling on the road the way he is because his wife is gone. Like, he's just lonely, so he surrounds himself with strangers, and he makes connections with strangers and everything. And like I said, there's that underlying sadness to it. And if you watch the movie like when you're a kid, you don't really pick up on it. But as you get older and you realize, like, no, there's like that's pretty sad. He's depressed, really, and he kind of hides it through just being overtly friendly with everybody or whatever. And then of course Steve Martin is like the likable asshole basically in the movie. But yeah, I enjoy Planes, Trains, and Automobiles a lot, and everything. So that's coming in at number 10. So number 9 is a throwback. It's a Western. It's from the 60s, 1969 to be exact. And I'm talking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You got Robert Redford and Paul Newman. And this is a buddy movie before the term even really got popular, really. Even though you had a lot of buddy movies, but they weren't necessarily being called buddy movies necessarily, or the phrase wasn't turned. The phrase wasn't like put into pop culture like, oh, it's a buddy movie type situation, but it definitely is a buddy movie. Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, Redford and Newman, they play off each other very well in that movie. My favorite scene in that movie is probably the one, I think it's a lot of people's favorite scene, I think, where they like on the side of the cliff because, they running and everything. And then they end up in this position where it's like, well, if we sit here, we'll probably get killed. So let's just jump into this river and just hope we don't die and everything. And the fact that Robert Redford's character is like, I can't swim. It's like, what? Because he's like, I'm afraid. Like, what? I can't swim. And he said it so matter of fact. And then Paul Newman just kind of looks at him, and then he just started laughing like, hey, this, like, what? Like you're the toughest dude that I know, but this is what you're afraid of? And then they end up jumping over into the water anyway. And like I said, just the way they play off each other in that movie is dope. And everything. And like I said, they have a lot of fun with it. And of course, they go out in style. That last frame, of course, right? So that's number 9. Coming in at number 8. I think this movie, you could call this like the standard, the gold standard when it comes to buddy movies, especially with action movies or whatever. And I'm talking about Lethal Weapon 1987. You got Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, who played off each other very well, not just in this movie, but throughout their whole franchise, all 4 movies. They just worked very well together. They just clicked. You have Danny Glover as Murtaugh, the family man, the more straight and arrow guy. And then you have Mel Gibson as Riggs, who's just this wild man, and everything. And he kind of becomes part of the family, and everything. And the way they play off each other, especially in this first movie, because Riggs pretty much is like, he has a death wish. Like, he wants to die because, his wife, she was brutally murdered and everything like that. And he just kind of, there's a scene in the movie basically where he's contemplating suicide. And then also too, there's that whole thing where he's basically he's going to prove to Murtaugh, like, no, he's not crazy. He really wants to die. And everything. But it's interesting how Riggs, he gets a little bit more domesticated because of the fact that he finds an extended family with Murtaugh's family throughout the course of the franchise. And of course, in the third movie, he, ends up meeting basically his mirror, in a sense, and Rene Russo's character. And, they end up getting together, they get married, and they have a baby, right? But that's later on. But as far as the first movie goes, the way they come together, Murtaugh and Riggs, and they try to solve, this murder. Well, it's a suicide that we find out it's a lot more going on with it and everything. And I always kind of laugh about the fact when I realized that Friday kind of ripped off the ending of Lethal Weapon, because if you watch Friday and, you have the big fight between Craig and Debo on the front yard, well, Stanley's front yard. And then when you watch Lethal Weapon, and the big finale is the fight on the front yard between Riggs and Mr. Joshua, played by Gary Busey. And it's like, I wonder did Ice Cube watch, either him or DJ Pooh, did they watch, they watch Lethal Weapon? It's like, ooh, that'd be a cool way to kind of end the movie, I guess. I don't know. But I just kind of find it funny that, Friday in a way kind of rips off the ending to Lethal Weapon. But Riggs and Murtaugh, that's a great duo. That's kind of like one of the first ones that you think about when you think about like movie duos and everything. Coming in at number 7, is ironically the movie that I had originally promoted of doing, and that is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Robert Downey Jr. and the late Val Kilmer. the way they pair up in this movie, because you have Robert Downey Jr.'s character, who's like this. He's a detective. He's like a private investigator, but he's an actor. He does a lot of odd jobs or whatever, but he's trying to solve a crime along with Val Kilmer's character, who's like a private investigator himself, and they come together, to kind of solve this crime and everything. And I mean, both of them kind of have like their own little quirks and ticks or whatever. But Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is a fun movie, and I do plan on reviewing that movie at some point. Maybe before the year's old, so maybe December-ish, maybe. If not November. Like I said, it all depends on where I'm at when we get towards the end of October with all the horror stuff. We'll see. So if not November, I say December is probably where I will squeeze in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang as a full review. But I think it's an underrated movie. It's a movie that kind of doesn't get talked about enough a lot. I think Downey is really good in it. And of course, this is all pre, Iron Man. So this is him still trying to find him way back into the really good graces of Hollywood. I mean, this is 3 or 4 years before Iron Man and everything, but he's really good in it. I mean, Val Kilmer is always great in the movies that he was in. I think I talked about that when I did the Val Kilmer episode earlier this year and everything. Like he's just great. And like I said, it sucks that, he lost his battle, with cancer and everything like that. Whatever. But seeing him and RDJ here, I mean, they work very well together in this movie. So next up, coming in at number 6. I mean, this is the movie I feel is the reason why like the whole buddy thing became a huge thing in the 80s going into the 90s. And I'm talking about 48 Hours from 1982. I mean, we got Nick Nolte and a very young Eddie Murphy. And just on paper, you would not necessarily think that Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy would work, but it's kind of similar to Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black. On paper, you're like, I don't know if that would actually work, but it does. And even though Eddie Murphy character of Reggie, Reggie Hammond, he's, just going 100 miles a minute and everything like that. But then you have Nick Nolte's character, Jack Cates and everything, who I would say this, Nick Nolte is very funny in the movie in a way of where you have to kind of really pay attention to it. It's almost similar to how I feel about Harold Ramis in Ghostbusters. Like, you have to really pay attention. Now, all the racist stuff that his character says throughout the movie, not withholding that, but just like there's certain things, like certain faces that Nick Nolte makes, and just how he talks to how him and Reggie kind of play off each other. It, like I say, it just works perfect. And I think that's one reason why you started to get like a string of these type of movies, throughout the 80s and through the 90s, because the formula, it works so well with these two. Like, they just want to keep recapturing that type of magic. And they do. I mean, they do a great job of that. And everything. So coming in at number 5, we have Bad Boys, 1995. Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, playing cops in Miami, trying to bring down drug dealers and, whatever else they can bring down. And they really work great off of each other. And it's ironic that this movie spawned a whole freaking franchise as well. And this comes on the heels of, Will Smith was in the, he was pretty much like transitioning from TV into being a movie star. And, this comes out the year before Independence Day, before he becomes known as Mr. Summer Blockbuster and everything. And his career takes off, where it took off to, throughout the late 90s and to the 2000s. Martin, I mean, his show was still going strong and everything. And like I said, they just played great off each other in this movie. And similar to how I feel about Riggs and Murtaugh. Like how their chemistry gets even better throughout the course of the franchise. The same thing with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. The only difference here is that both of these guys are kind of like wild cards in a way. Because even though Martin character of Marcus is supposed to be like the straight lace character, but he does a whole bunch of nonsense throughout this movie too, and everything. Whereas Will Smith's character, Mike Larry is supposed to be, the wild card, but Marcus is just as much, if not even more crazy than Mike Larry. And it's even kind of mentioned throughout the course of the franchise, that like Marcus, is kind of crazy and everything. And you wouldn't necessarily think about that from the guy who has the family, and everything. So, all right. So coming in at number 4 on my list, you have The Nice Guys, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And this movie is a throwback to, those type of movies that you would have got in the 80s and the 90s with these two type of characters. And seeing Ryan Gosling play this character is kind of insane. Just seeing Ryan Gosling kind of lose it and everything. And Russell Crowe is just kind of, going through the movie, and he has his moments as well. But I think it's a little bit funny seeing Ryan Gosling like this, because most of the stuff that Ryan Gosling is known for is a little bit more serious, but Ryan Gosling has like that funny, quirky side to him as well. And he shows that quite a bit throughout The Nice Guys, which is a good touch. And I mean, there was a rumor that we would get a Nice Guys 2. It would be nice if they did do that, but at least we got the first movie with this duo together, and everything. Next up, now I could have picked another movie with this particular duo because they did do 3, but this one is more so fits into this whole thing, and it meshes. Actually, it kind of meshes all three of the criteria I have, because it has action, it's a comedy also, and it's also a cop thriller in a way. And I'm talking about Hot Fuzz, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and everything. These two pretty much. It's basically like a kind of similar to Shaun of the Dead, what it was to horror zombie movies. That's what Hot Fuzz is to these action buddy movies in a way, because it is pretty much a satire, a love letter, if you will, to, that subgenre of movie, and everything. And Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, they play off each other really well in this movie, and Hot Fuzz is a lot of fun. It's almost kind of debatable which one might be better of the unofficial Cornetto trilogy. If it's this or if it's Shaun of the Dead. I mean, At World's End is what it is. Not saying it's bad, but I don't feel it's on the same level of either Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead. But like I say, these two could be argued which one is 1 and 1A to a degree. And like I say, if you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend checking it out, because it is, like I said, it's a fun movie, and seeing freaking Timothy Dalton playing a villain in the movie is kind of insane too, because he's having a lot of fun in his villainous role and everything. So coming in at number 2 for me of this list at least is Rush Hour, Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker. On paper, you wouldn't necessarily think that it would work, but they found something, a common ground, something that both are just, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. Because like I said, I mean, when this movie first came out, I was like, wait a minute, the dude from Rumble in the Bronx? Because at that time, Rumble in the Bronx I think was like the only Jackie Chan movie I had seen at the time. But I'm like, so the guy from Rumble in the Bronx with Smokey? Huh, that's going to be interesting. And it was. It's a great freaking movie. And just how they play off each other. And again, you see that not only were these two great on screen, but you could tell like they became like friends and everything because they just played off each other, and they was allowed to kind of just riff in a lot of ways or whatever. Now I don't think at this point we'll get a Rush Hour 4. I think we got a better chance of getting a Lethal Weapon 5 than we do getting a Rush Hour 4. But I mean, it was just kind of cool to see Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker together, and them running around LA, trying to bring down the infamous Juntao and everything. And I mean, both are funny in the movie. I mean, of course, Chris Tucker is the over the top loudmouth of the group, but Jackie Chan gets his moments in too with some of the comedy and everything too, which I really liked. And him trying to sing "War, what is it good for?" Absolutely nothing is kind of hilarious and everything too. Now, okay, so coming in at number 1, and this might be not only just for this list number 1, but if I did an official like buddy movie and everything, I should say, I think this might turn out to be my number 1 as well, because I have a lot of fun with this movie. And I'm talking about Midnight Run from 1988, Robert De Niro, Charles Grodin. Granted, both guys, I mean, the way they are in this movie, because now see, here's the interesting thing about it. De Niro's character of Jack Walsh is supposed to be quote unquote straight laced because he's an ex-cop who is a bounty hunter. But then you have Charles Grodin character who is this, I won't say rich guy, but he's well off enough. He's doing well for himself. And the fact that he was stealing money from the mob or whatever. So technically on paper, both guys are could be considered straight laced, but it's what they do that makes it funny, because Jack, he's pretty much giving Yaphet Kotter's character of Alonzo Mosley, he's giving him a lot of grief, and he's just being a complete dick when it comes to dealing with Alonzo Mosley, who's with the FBI and everything. And the fact that he steals his identity and he pretends to be Mosley throughout the movie, which is always hilarious. I mean, De Niro is very funny in this movie, and in a lot of ways, he's playing it straight. Like, he's not trying to, like, the character's not trying to be funny, but he's funny. Whereas even with Charles Grodin, it's like he's not overtly trying to be funny, but they are funny. And like I say, I know I might be explaining it a little, a little wrong or whatever, but at the same time, it's like you have to see the movie to kind of understand what I mean by it. It's like they're not doing anything that's overtly funny, but it's just the way the situations unfold, or like even some of the conversations that make it funny. Cause like there's one scene where they're on a bus and they're having a conversation and it's talking about smoking and talking about, different things or whatever. And you can tell that it gets to a point where they've gone completely off script, and it's very subtle, but De Niro even looks at the camera like we still doing this and everything. And, the camera just continues to roll, and just like the chemistry that they have together. And it's like, you wouldn't necessarily think that Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin would have that type of chemistry, or that they could be like as funny as they are together, but they are. And it's just like the situations that they find themselves in, and them running around and all this type of stuff. Because at this point, I mean, De Niro is in his late 40s at this point. I think Charles Grodin was in his 50s. I think he was like 51 or 52, because I reviewed Midnight Run a while back on the podcast, and I talked about it. I was like, yeah, they wasn't young dudes, but they were just running around, and it's like, that's crazy. And I mean, I just love Midnight Run. It's always been a fun movie to me as a kid watching it. I've always had fun watching it. I still continue to have fun watching it. I enjoy the soundtrack a lot for this movie. I think it's probably one of the best movie soundtracks. Like the original score and everything is just great and everything. And I think that's the reason why it's my number one, because unlike a lot of the other movies on the list, they're not doing anything that's overtly funny. I mean, yeah, you have that running joke throughout the movie with because he's always gonna be freaking Taggart, but John Ashton, who plays the character of Marvin, who always trying to steal Charles Grodin from Robert De Niro's character. But anytime they kind of get into a situation or whatever, and De Niro's always like, Marvin, look out, and Marvin always turns and looks, and it's like, why are you falling for this every time? Like every time you fall for the look out or what's that, and so you could turn and then you get sucker punched, and now you over here asleep and everything. So that's like a running joke throughout the movie. But like I said, it's just one of those movies where the main characters, they're not doing anything that's too overtly funny, but it's funny stuff. And I think that's one thing that makes Midnight Run so great. And that's probably why I put it at least number one on this list, and why it possibly could be a number one on an official buddy movie list. And you know what? After doing this episode, I might actually go to my letterbox, and I might actually do like an official top 10 buddy movie list and everything. So if I do, I might post it or whatever, and to let everybody know. Or I might, come back on the episode and give my official buddy movie list and everything. So though that is the top 10. Now I do have a few honorable mentions, just because I couldn't continue. I couldn't just do this without mentioning some other movies. Now, I could have went a couple of different ways with this one particular person, because he's done movies with multiple people that can be considered buddy movies. But I decided to go with this one, and I'm talking about Ride Along, Ice Cube, and Kevin Hart. And I'm talking about Kevin Hart in the same. Well, as I'm kind of talking about Ice Cube also, because Friday is considered a buddy movie, right? You got Craig and Smokey, going through all this mischief, this nonsense on a Friday, right? Then you have All About the Benjamins, him and Mike Epps and everything. So like I said, I could have did that with Ice Cube as well. And then Kevin Hart, he has Get Hard with Will Ferrell. He has Central Intelligence with The Rock and everything. So like I said, I could have did multiple ways with either one of these guys for the most part. But I went with Ride Along and everything, because it kind of is also kind of like an action comedy in itself also. Step Brothers, Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. These two are like the fact that they're middle-aged men and they're acting like freaking teenagers, I think that's what makes the movie even funnier or whatever. And the fact that they don't like each other, but then they kind of bond or whatever, and everything makes it a fun movie. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. The early 2000s, like, buddy movies. I think this is one that got a lot of rotation from a lot of people, and kind of, I think, helped kind of keep the buddy movie, thing going for a while, as well. Cal Penn and John Cho, I think they have great chemistry together, henceforth why you did get a sequel, and everything like that. I mentioned it earlier, but it is an honorable mention. I'm talking about Men in Black, Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. I just think that Bad Boys just a little bit, over Men in Black, but I could have easily changed them for this list. And one that I feel that is a little bit underrated in a lot of ways. Not just, the movie's a little underrated as far as an action movie, but I think this duo is a little bit underrated as well. And I'm talking about Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell in Tango and Cash. I think they played off each other very well. And it's a buddy movie, even though it is a pure action, movie and everything, with some comedic stuff throughout, but it is a pure action, movie. And they find themselves in some nasty situations throughout the course of that movie. But I think they was having a lot of fun with that movie and everything like that. So there are a few of my honorable mentions. I will ask you guys, the listeners, if you have, like I said earlier, if you have some, movies that if you didn't hear any that are your favorites or whatever, like I say, definitely hit me up on the social medias and everything. Let me know your favorite. You're listening to this on YouTube. Like I say, comment down below what some of your favorite buddy movies are, and we can talk about it. And I'll probably also mention them on the next episode or whatever like that. And everything. And I mean, what makes a buddy movie timeless is me personally, I think it's the chemistry. Cause like I said earlier, if the main actors don't have that chemistry, then the movie doesn't work. And everything. So I will ask another question. Not only name some of your other favorite buddy movies, but also what are some that you feel where the chemistry was just completely off, like they did not work together at all. I would love to know you guys' thoughts about that. And also too, I mean, some of the movies I think that help like influence like later films. The fact that 21 Jump Street, in a sense, is a buddy movie. I didn't have it on my 10 movie list or the honorable mentions, and I'm talking about the ones with Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. I mean, those are buddy movies, but they just didn't make my list or anything. But movies like that. I'm trying to think, what else do we have that are like buddy movies of recent years. I mean, besides the ones like with The Rock and Kevin Hart, or Deadpool and Wolverine, that's a buddy movie to an extent, right? So I mean, like I said, we still get them. Just we don't get them on the same level of what we once did in the 80s and 90s, and everything. Could we consider? I mean, would you consider? Well, Loaded Weapon 1 with Samuel L. Jackson and Emilio Estevez. That's a buddy movie. Men at Work with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen. The one movie that they did together. Well, I should say the second movie that they did together, even though they was only in half of a movie together. Talking about Young Guns, where Charlie Sheen ends up, exiting stage left fairly early in that movie. But yeah, I mean, you got that another Stakeout with, again, Emilio Estevez and Richard Dreyfuss, and everything. Hell, I mean, would you consider? No, I mean, I wouldn't consider that a buddy. Well, I mean, you could consider Enemy of the State a buddy movie to an extent with Will Smith and Gene Hackman. So like I say, there's a lot of buddy type movies out there, and everything. So, like I say, I would like to know what was your favorite buddy movie, and also what are some that you don't consider to be any good, in everything. Because I mean, there are some of those out there, but I would love to know what you guys think, and everything. So, I mean, that is pretty much it for this episode. It's not a long episode. Like I said, I wanted to get this in because this is the bridge between the end of August and going into, like I say, full-on spooky season horror movie mode for me. I won't tell you guys exactly what I'm going to start off with just yet, but we are going to have some fun these next 2 months with the whole horror thing like that. As I mentioned earlier, you can find me all over social media, whether it's on Instagram at JMT Podcast, all my personal page, The J Giles, over on Threads as well, The J Giles there, on YouTube, because like I said, I'm over on YouTube now, and everything, and I'm pushing that a little bit more. So you're gonna see posts like that, getting shorts and reels and things like that. I'm expanding, and everything like that. So definitely check that out. Doing the Twitch thing also. So I might continue this conversation on Twitch on my next live or whatever. Just kind of going a little bit more in depth about the buddy movies, and might even over there I might even talk more about my official list that I might do on Letterboxd and everything like that. Trying to think where else. Like I said, the Reddit Vault Crew over on Reddit. Like I say, you just join and just start having some conversations. Post some stuff like that, and I'll probably post my question over there about the buddy movie over there as well. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I will be back for episode 351 as I officially kick off spooky season, horror movies galore. I should say extravaganza, if you will, and everything like that. I want to thank everybody for listening once again, and I will check you guys next time. Peace.